While your ears recover from the screechy scream, you can feast your eyes on this little 8-bit marvel, The Way of the Exploding Fist. The Way of the Exploding Fist is a 1985 fighting game based on Japanese martial arts and was developed by Beam Software for the Commodore 64 and published in June 1985 by Melbourne House. The visuals were really good for their time, and the soundtrack was based on a 1952 orchestral piece, Dance of the Yao People. It has been praised for the excellent atmosphere it provided and was one reason behind the popularity of the game. The game came out right in the middle of the martial arts craze that had been sweeping across the country, thanks in part to movies that were about at the time, such as The Karate Kid, Enter the Ninja, and Revenge of the Ninja. The player takes part in a series of one-on-one karate matches, all overseen by a wise old expert who appears in the background. Once the player defeats an opponent, they move up to the next stage and a more difficult adversary. Fights are not won using the energy bar style found in modern fighting games. Instead, the player needs to get 2 complete yin-yangs. Any move that connected with the opponent would end the round. A loosely timed or borderline kick or punch would obtain half a yin-yang icon, while a well executed move would obtain a full icon. 2 complete icons ended the bout and progressed to the next level. This system of scoring, known as Shobu Nihon Kumite, is used in real life in many traditional styles of karate. A half yin-yang represents a waza-ari, a committed but not decisive technique, and a full yin-yang represents an ippon score, full point, or a decisive finishing blow. A problem facing developers of this type of game was, how do you squeeze in a variety of moves when the player only has one button on the controller? Broderbund, who had released Karateka the previous Christmas for the Apple II, got around this problem by having the player use a joystick direction and to tap the fire button for a punch and hold it down for a kick. This was not that intuitive, and when I played it as a kid, it would seem that moves were randomly selected and it was sheer luck any moves were pulled off at all. In 1984, Data East released a competitive fighting game in the arcades called Karate Champ. Data East got around the problem of move execution by removing the fire button entirely and adding in a second joystick. A joystick had an 8-point axis, so if each of these points could behave like a fire button, then adding in the second joystick you would get another 8 fire buttons. And if 2 buttons could be pressed together, then a move would be performed. Here is a move list for Karate Champ. The top row is the right joystick, and the leftmost row is the left joystick. If you wanted to perform an upper punch, then you would push up on the right and back on the left together. This was a pretty ingenious method. It took a while to get used to it right enough, but at the time it was a really intelligent solution to the problem of limited movesets. So the guys at Melbourne House got to work on an idea inspired by Karate Champ, but one that would be possible on a single joystick. Most home computers only had 2 joystick ports. This would make it difficult for a single player to play. You could use the keyboard, but for many Commodore 64 games, the joystick was the preferred method. What Melbourne House came up with was similar to Data East, but instead of adding in additional buttons, the fire button would be held and then a joystick direction would be performed, and this would result in a move being executed. For example, in Exploding Fist, if you wanted to perform a roundhouse, you would hold fire and then hold back. If you release the fire button, you then walk backwards or block. This method allowed for 2 players to have competitive bouts and both could use a joystick. In total, 18 different movements can be made, including jumping kick, roundhouse kick, and a variety of punches and kicks, high and low. The game features a variety of backgrounds against which the fighting takes place. After completing a number of progressively harder stages, the player is charged at by a bull in a bonus round. The player must knock the bull out with a single hit. The way of the Exploding Fist, much like Karate Champ, should not be really classified as a beat 'em up. Well, that's how I see it anyway. In these games, you score points for a hit, just like in proper karate tournaments. In beat 'em ups, you knock out the other guy completely. But regardless of how you want to classify the game, The Way of the Exploding Fist is a great game to play. I would play this game loads on my Commodore 64. It was one of the few games I had that was actually not a copy, and I still have it in its plastic case with my Commodore 64 up in the loft. I remember playing my sister and my dad at this game and constantly looking to improve my timing and reflexes. There were other versions of this great game out on the Spectrum and other formats. I never played any of those versions as far as I was aware. The Commodore 64 version was the best version around. The combat system depended on good timing as opposed to pointless button mashing, and you had to think smartly about what punch or kick to use in the right moment, and this kind of combat would not be replicated for many years. But that's a video for another time. In closing, The Way of the Exploded Fist was fantastic and is still a great game to play today, and it laid the groundwork for what was possible in one-on-one combative fighting games for the home micros. That's all from me. If you like this video, then please feel free to like, comment and subscribe. Thank you for watching.